In today's video we are going to talk about stats, soft caps, hard caps, scaling, and what does all of that do to my character so that I can min-max a character build. This is mostly going to be beneficial for new players. I know that there's a whole lot of new people trying to play the first Berserker Khazan, because this is not anymore for the elite kind of audience or that specific niche audience, because this has an easy difficulty. So a lot of people that are already Souls veterans and Neo veterans and all of the kind of like the overall investment into the genre are still going to learn quite some things on this video, because there are some interesting findings with the stats. The first thing that you need to have in mind is the scaling. That's the very first thing that we are going to talk about. Each weapon has a scaling. The scaling is going to determine the damage investment that you are going to receive whenever you invest more points into that specific given stat. So you will see in here that the greatswords, they scale with B. Every time that you place points into B, you're going to increase your damage. And then you have the dual wields. They scale their damage with willpower. So these guys, you are going to increase their damage with willpower. For spears, it's going to be the proficiency. And mind you, this is something fixed. It doesn't matter that you are using a different weapon, a different rarity, a different level. The scaling, it's always fixed. That is why the demo weapons, which there's a video link in the video description to talk about the demo weapons, which is why they are so much better, because they have higher scaling. This is never going to change, and this is always going to give you a flat damage. Every time that you upgrade a weapon, what it's going to change, it's going to be their attack value. As you can see, this is a level 94, meaning it's going to have 302 damage. This is a level 100, meaning it's going to have 327 damage. But the scaling is always going to be the same. I am always going to receive the same scaling value from there. So that being said, there are no soft caps when it comes to scaling the damage of a weapon. And this is true for every single weapon. All of the weapons will always have a predetermined plus 3 points into damage every time that I invest points into my stats. So now I have a spear or polearm equipped. Every time that I invest points in here, I am always going to get 3 points more into damage until I reach the cap of the stat, which is 99, for a total maximum of 267. And this is actually true for every single weapon. Every single weapon is going to have this precise, exact scaling, and it's never going to diminish. So if I were to, for example, equip my greatsword in here, now I have a greatsword equipped, I go now to upgrade the scaling of my weapon, it's still 3 points into damage, and every time that I reach my final stat is going to be a flat 267 of damage scaling from my weapon. But remember that you're also getting damage from the level of your weapon. The higher the level of the weapon, the higher damage that you are going to deal. And then there is also no soft cap when it comes to the scaling value of investing more points with the off stat of the weapon. The greatswords have a C scaling with willpower, and so on and so forth. The rest of the weapons also have a C scaling. A C scaling is going to give you a value of 1 point in here. So the maximum total amount that you can reach for the damage scaling is going to be the 267 from the strength, and then extra 90 points from the willpower. So for new players, what is a soft cap, what is a hard cap, and why is that important then for my character build if I'm just going to be allocating points in there like a maniac, because that's going to be my main damage dealing stat. A soft cap is when you reach a threshold and you start getting diminishing returns into that specific even stat. A hard cap is when you reach a higher threshold and then you start getting even more heavy diminishing returns into that stat until you manage to reach the cap. Every single stat has a soft cap and a hard cap at level 60. And while the damage stat scaling is always going to be the same, remember that each specific stat gives you something different. Like for example, the proficiency that gives you dodge stamina cost decrease. This is always going to give you 0.7% as a dodge stamina cost decrease. When we reach to level 30, we reach our first soft cap. Instead of that 0.7, it's going to be 0.4, and this is going to be true for every single level until we reach the level 60, which is going to go from even higher. This is a hard cap because this is where you start getting like a huge diminishing return. We went from 7 to 0.4. Now it's 0.3 after 2 levels. So 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2. So that is the hard cap of the stat. And this is actually true for every single stat. The same goes for vitality, because vitality is going to give us flat 50 points every time that we invest points in here. Once we reach level 30, we get 40 points, which is actually not that bad, but that is the soft cap of the stat. And then once we reach level 60, we reach the hard cap when we instead start getting 30 points into strength for every investment in here. The same thing happens for endurance. Endurance is going to be giving us 15 points, I believe. Yes, 15 points into stamina, all the way towards the soft cap, which is at level 300. And then here we start getting 13 instead of those 15. On the hard cap is going to be just 10 instead of those 13. So once you reach the hard cap, your stamina is going to be just 10 points in here for a maximum total value of a 1080 total stamina, max stamina. So how should my build be looking like if I want to establish a build? A lot of the stuff that you have in here, remember that this is stuff that you might actually want to have in your build, because naturally the spears, for example, let's just make a general build in here. My general builds are always going to be 30 vitality and 30 endurance, because that's when I reach my soft cap, and I think that's more than enough for health for me to manage, and more than enough endurance for me to manage the stuff and the combos that I want to make. Have in mind that you can also use the blacksmithing, which there's also a guide on the channel on how to use blacksmithing to allocate health into your gear that is not going to be subject to the soft caps and hard caps in here. Those are going to be flat values. So on your gear you can add more stamina, more strength, more stamina recovery, more stamina dodge, cost increase and decrease. That is going to be away from the soft caps and hard caps that the stats are going to give you. So ideally, what you would want to do with a build is reach vitality 30, endurance 30, and then your main damage dealing stat all the way to 99, and that is how you're going to establish a build. I do not advise for you to use the C scaling of your weapon, because 1 point, it's just not going to be that much of a difference. If you have the spare points to use, then be my guest, of course. But let's say, for example, that you manage to reach the level 99 into proficiency, which is the main damage dealing stat, and then at that point you can be investing points, for example, into strength, because as you can see right here, if I reach my soft cap on strength at 30, even though that it is not going to give me damage, it's going to give me a on my agility, meaning that this is going to give me flat stamina recovery, and overall I'm going to have more iframes, I am going to have more stamina and things like that. But also have in mind that, for example, if you are playing like a spear but you don't want to have the dodge kind of playstyle that the spear kind of forces you to do, because proficiency is going to give you that dodge stamina cost decrease. So ideally with spears you want to be dodging, because it's going to cost you less stamina, and also the skills that you have for the spears usually benefit from dodging quite a lot. But let's say that you just do not want to meddle with that and you want to have a little bit more versatility, then you can reach the soft cap for guard in here to have a little extra bonus on guarding, but this is a main damage dealing stat for dual blades. So just have in mind that there are soft caps, that there are hard caps, and that there's things that you can for sure do with your weapons, but my overall recommendation would be for a optimal build is for you to level up vitality 30, endurance 30, and then reach your main damage dealing stat all the way to 99. Only then can you decide if you want to invest into the rest of the stats, but just do so on the soft caps and the hard caps, because overall allocating stats mindlessly is never going to be good for anyone. If you like the content, like and never super appreciate it. Not only there you go, just a beautiful person. You are in there you go, just a beautiful, beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.